And even more alarmingly, when George Stephanopoulos talked to Donald Trump Jr., he didn't seem to understand what a blind trust was either.
It's not a blind trust if you and your siblings are still running the company.
We're not going to be involved in government. We wouldn't be involved in government.
Then it's not a blind trust. You're running the company, and he's president. So any foreign individual...
But he's not making any decisions as it relates to the company?
But a blind trust, it's not a blind trust if it's being run by his children.
It is, because he'll have nothing to do with it, George.
He's still going to know what the businesses are, where they are.
We will not discuss,
because
we're not going to discuss those things. It doesn't matter. Trust me.
Wait. Trust you? The only reasonable thing to trust you on is which hair products can best make someone look like a 1980s serial killer. That's it. And look, if the financial actions of the Clinton Foundation annoy you, let me introduce you to the Trump Foundation. And I'm not talking about the estimated 12 pounds of foundation that Trump wears on his face. I'm talking about his charitable organisation. The Washington Post has been investigating and has found, among other things, that Trump has not personally given it any money since 2008. And just this week, this story broke.
Donald Trump is facing questions tonight about his charitable foundation after a report today in the Washington Post. The foundation spent more than $250,000 of donated money to settle lawsuits against Trump businesses.
Yes. Trump reportedly used his foundation's money, which had been donated by people for charitable purposes, as a tool to make some legal disputes go away. And on the spectrum of shittiest things you can do, that is right up there with catfishing a baby owl. He waited all night for you, and he's nocturnal, so that's his day gone. And Trump also allegedly used foundation money to purchase ridiculous items for himself.
In another instance, Trump's foundation paid $10,000 at a charity auction in 2014 for a portrait painted of Trump. It was the second time Trump used foundation funds for a portrait of him.
Okay, wait. Just for a start, what is he doing with his face in that photo? That is not a smile, that's waking up in the middle of a colonoscopy. And also, on top of that, how did that portrait cost $10,000? It looks like someone Xeroxed a black and white picture of Trump and then painted over it with condiments from Burger King. Now, what Trump did there would technically be legal as long as the portrait itself was put to some charitable purpose. Well, Univision found it, and it wasn't exactly in an orphanage.
This is the painting that Donald Trump purchased with funds donated to the charitable foundation that carries his last name. This morning, Univision got the scoop that the artwork remained hanging inside the restaurant Champions Bar and Grill, inside the Doral Hotel and Golf Course, a property owned by Donald Trump.
Now, in Trump's defense, that portrait is the perfect pairing for his restaurant's signature dishes, which are apparently, according to Yelp reviewers, watery tomato chunks with no flavour and craft beer brands misspelled on the menu. And it is not just portraits. Trump also once used foundation funds to buy a signed Tim Tebow helmet, a steal at $12,000 for something that once contained the head of America's worst quarterback. He also used funds to make an illegal political donation to support Florida AG Pam Bondi around the time that she was considering investigating his not-a-university. So it seems the Trump Foundation may exist primarily to benefit Trump himself, in which case they should really change the name to something more appropriate, like the National Association for the Advancement of Donald Trump, or the NAADT for short. And the thing is, we have barely scratched the surface of his scandals. There is everything from the ongoing lawsuits against that bullshit university, to the alleged use of undocumented workers when building Trump Tower, to the fact he received an illegal $3.5 million loan from his father in the form of a purchase of chips from one of Trump's casinos. And that loan could not have been shadier if it was given in baggies of cocaine or the bones of endangered species. Look, the point is, this campaign has been dominated by scandals, but it is dangerous to think that there is an equal number on both sides. And you can be irritated. Our main story tonight, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, is Donald Trump. And I say that knowing that every time his name is said out loud, he has a shattering orgasm. And look, we have mostly ignored Trump on this show, but he has now won 3 states, has been endorsed by Chris Christie, and polls show him leading most Super Tuesday states, which is a big deal. Since 1988, every candidate who's won the most states on Super Tuesday went on to become their party's nominee. So at this point, Donald Trump is America's back mole. It may have seemed harmless a year ago, but now that it's gotten frighteningly bigger, it is no longer wise to ignore it. And I do understand why Trump supporters might like him. He's unpredictable and entertaining. Just look how he went after Marco Rubio on Friday.
Did you ever see a guy sweat like this? It's Rubio! That's what it...
That's objectively funny. Just as it was funny when a few years ago he tweeted, "I would like to extend my best wishes to all, even the haters and losers, on this special date, September the 11th. He wished haters and losers a happy 9/11. There is a part of me that even likes this guy. It's a part of me I hate, but it is a part of me. And if you are someone who's sick of the party establishment, he might seem like a protest candidate with some attractive qualities."
We like him. He tells it like it is.
He says what he means. I honestly believe he's telling the truth.
He's funding his own campaign. Nobody owns him.
He's aggressive, and he's strong, and he's bold.
I think he's an incredible businessman. If he runs the country like he runs his organization, we would be in good shape.
Donald Trump can seem appealing until you take a closer look. Much like the lunch buffet at a strip club, or the NFL, or having a pet chimpanzee. Sure, it seems fun, but someday Coco's going to tear your fucking limbs off. Because let's look at each of those qualities those people listed. First, he tells it like it is. Does he? Because the website PolitiFact checked 77 of his statements and rated 76% of them as varying degrees of false. And I've witnessed this firsthand. He once attacked my old boss by tweeting, "If Jon Stewart is so above it all and legit, why did he change his name from Jonathan Leibowitz? He should be proud of his heritage." And then 2 years later wrote, "I never attacked dopey Jon Stewart for his phony last name, would never do that." And then just last year, he claimed falsely to have turned down an invite to appear on this very boring show. And who's he trying to impress with that lie? Our show's guests include sloths and puppies. We're basically a petting zoo with a desk. But when we pointed out that he had never been invited, this is how he responded.
All of a sudden, I see people saying that John Oliver, and I'm saying, John Oliver? And I checked with my people. He asked me to be on the show 4 or 5 times. And I don't even hardly know who he was. I wouldn't know what he looks like.
Well, look, first, I wouldn't expect him to know who I was, although for his inevitable angry tweet about this segment, I'll tell him what I look like. I look like a nearsighted parrot who works at a bank. But secondly, it was genuinely destabilising to be on the receiving end of a lie that confident. I even checked to make sure that no one had even accidentally invited him. And of course they hadn't. And I'm not even sure he knows he's lying. I think he just doesn't care about what the truth is. Donald Trump views the truth like this lemur views the Supreme Court vacancy. I don't care about that in any way. Please f*** off, I have a banana. So let's move on. Let's move on to his next selling point, that he is truly independent and not beholden to anyone. Or as he puts it...
I'm self-funding my campaign. I tell the truth.
How much have you spent so far?
Probably $25 million.
OK, let's break that down. First, I'm rich, therefore I tell the truth. Has the same internal logic as I'm a vegan, therefore I know karate. There is no cause and effect between those two, and the correlation usually goes the other way. And while it is true that he hasn't taken corporate money, the implication that he has personally spent $20 to $25 million is a bit of a stretch, because what he's actually done is loaned his own campaign $17.5 million and has just personally given just $250,000. And that's important, because up until the convention, he can pay himself back for the loan with campaign funds.
Dan hasn't even been a president for a day yet, all right? Let's give him a chance to be the president.
Give Donald Trump a chance.
We now have to give him a chance and see how he's going to govern.
The American people should give him a chance to govern, because if he succeeds, we succeed.
Now, in the broadest sense, I get that impulse. Hope for the best, in the face of very long odds. It's like we're on a plane and we just found out our pilot is a wombat. I don't like this, I don't understand how it happened, and I'm pretty sure we're headed for disaster, but what the hell? Come on, Batty, prove me wrong! And the thing is, optimism is nice if you can swing it, but you've got to be careful, because it can feed into the normalisation of Donald Trump, and he is not normal. He is abnormal. He is a human what is wrong with this picture. He sticks out like a sore thumb, and frankly, he even looks like a sore thumb. So giving him a chance in the sense of not speaking out immediately against policies that he's proposed is dangerous, because some of them are alarming.
Just some of Trump's promises: repeal and replace Obamacare, build a wall along the southern border with Mexico and get Mexico to pay for said wall, deport all 11 to 12 million undocumented immigrants in this country, including children, appoint a special prosecutor to investigate and potentially jail Hillary Clinton, temporarily ban Muslims and immigrants from terror-prone nations from coming into the United States.
Okay, stop, just stop. Because it sounds like you're reading the to-do list on Satan's refrigerator. Which, of course, Satan no longer needs now that hell has frozen over. And while some are arguing that Trump might not have meant all those things, that leaves us with two devastating options. Either we just elected a president who didn't mean a single word he said, or we elected one who did. And it's impossible to know which one. Earlier tonight, he did his first major post-election interview, and he was asked about Obamacare, which, remember, he had labelled a disaster.
When you replace it, are you going to make sure that people with preconditions are still covered?
Yes, because it happens to be one of the strongest assets.
You're going to keep that?
Also, with the children living with their parents for an extended period, we're going to...
You're going to keep
very
that?
much try and keep that.
Oh, OK. So get ready for a barely changed version of Obamacare called Trump Care, which sounds like a healthcare plan where doctors feel your breasts for lumps whether you ask them to or not. But by the way, don't get complacent that he is going to keep those aspects of Obamacare. He might change his mind on that again. Trump is like a magic 8-ball. Every time you shake him, he gives you a different answer. And sometimes the answer is just big league or that's somebody on my daughter, right? So we have to take all of Trump's promises seriously. And the truth is, they were not all universally bad. For instance, he ran on a promise to drain the swamp, cracking down on corruption and ending the reign of Washington insiders, which sounds great. So let's try and be positive for a moment. What are the early signs on that?
Some of the potential cabinet members that are being reported by CNN that are under consideration: Rudy Giuliani, Newt Gingrich, Chris Christie, Reince Priebus.
Right, so that's the longtime head of the RNC, a former speaker who entered Congress in 1979, a former mayor turned professional arsehole, and a man whose name is more synonymous with scandal than Shonda fucking Rhimes. That is so swampy, you're going to need to swap out Air Force One for one of those shallow-bottom boats with a big fan on the back. And the thing is, it actually makes sense for Trump to appoint people with significant experience in government. Until a few days ago, the highest office he'd ever held was on the 26th floor of a shitty building on Fifth Avenue. But some of the people he's bringing in are horrifying. His transition team includes people like Ken Blackwell, who has argued that homosexuality is a choice. And he's named Myron Ebell to lead his EPA transition team, making him a frontrunner for administrator, despite this.
The whole case for global warming, I believe, is silly, and I believe the vast majority of scientists think it's silly. And therefore, I'm a little bit embarrassed that I waste my time on a silly issue.
OK, well, just first of all, the vast majority of scientists believe humans are contributing to climate change. And secondly, this man does not have a science degree. He wouldn't even be qualified to head the agency of baking soda volcanoes. So how the fuck did we get here? Well, clearly, there are many possible answers to that question, including misleading forecasts that bred complacency, a flawed candidate who failed to appeal to white, rural and working-class voters, and this is worth repeating, deep racism and/or indifference to it. What we do about Roy Moore. And even if you believe that Democrats are guilty of a double standard, the solution is not to have no standard whatsoever. That is why it's so important to train ourselves to identify these techniques, because their natural endpoint is the erosion of our ability to decide what's important, have an honest debate, and hold one another accountable. And that erosion can be so gradual that it's difficult to spot. It's like being murdered by a sloth. It happens very slowly, and you might not notice until it's too late. Now, listen, this is all very bleak. I cannot pretend that it isn't, which is why it is so important to take some hope from this year's small victories, like the Muslim ban being blocked by the courts after massive public protests, or the attempts to repeal Obamacare stalling thanks in part to people pressuring their lawmakers. And just this week in Virginia, voters rejected Ed Gillespie for governor after he ran a Trump-style dog whistle campaign, and that is encouraging, because it's nice to know that if you use Trump tactics in a Virginia gubernatorial election, you do not get to be gubernator. Now, further down the ballot there, Tuesday also marked the defeat of Bob Marshall, who earlier this year proposed a so-called bathroom bill. He lost to Danica Roem, who will now be Virginia's first openly transgender legislator. And the tone that she has taken is already markedly different.
Danica, you were running against Robert Marshall, an incumbent, 13-term incumbent. He's also a man who referred to himself as Virginia's chief homophobe. He refused to debate you during the campaign. Do you have anything you want to say to him?
Come January, Delegate Marshall will be one of my constituents, and I'm not going to disrespect my own constituents.
Wow. That is incredibly refreshing. Just think about that. She beat a man who openly disrespected her, but given the opportunity, she chose not to respond by tweeting, "I'll fight for Bob's rights to use any bathroom he wants, but it's too late. He already shit the bed on election day. Sad." It's nice. It's nice not to have that. And look, Tuesday's results should not make you complacent. They are absolutely no guarantee that the midterms will turn out at all well. That is why, though, you should take these moments of encouragement to help you keep going, because the Trump presidency is basically a marathon. It's painful, it's pointless, and the majority of you didn't even agree to run it. You were just signed up by your dumbest friend. And the fact is, we're not even at mile 6 right now, or possibly even mile 3. So there is a long way to go, and though you're exhausted and your whole body is screaming for you to give up and your nipples are chafing for some reason, the stakes are too high for any of us to stop. And I do realise that I'm saying that as we're about to stop doing shows for the year. But here's the thing, we won't actually be going away entirely. You may remember earlier this year, we used our catheter cowboy to try and get information to the president in the ad breaks of Fox and Friends. Well, Trump is still watching that show. And we know this because the Times wrote a generally negative piece about its enormous influence on him, and because of that, called it the most powerful TV show in America, a sentiment that the hosts were very excited about.
This program, the program you're watching, is, according to the New York Times, the most powerful TV show in America.
Do you know why, Steve? Because we have the best viewers.
Yes.
No. No, you don't. You absolutely don't. Oh, and look, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that we have the best viewers. No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm explicitly not saying that. You guys are fine. The best audience belongs to Ellen because this is how they greet her.
Here she is now, Ellen DeGeneres.
None of you fuckers did that when I came out. None of you did it. But the point here is, just 45 minutes after that information was on Fox, Trump tweeted, "Wow, the failing New York Times said about Fox and Friends, the most powerful TV show in America." So information goes right from that show into his brain, which is terrible. Because we would genuinely be better off if Trump was getting daily briefings from an actual fox and his friends, a hedgehog and a weasel with its head stuck in a tin can. But if Trump is going to keep watching that show, we are going to spend our hiatus sneaking information through our catheter cowboy. It's true. The US is absent at many important meetings, and that doesn't even include meetings that Jared Kushner was supposed to attend, but he couldn't find a room and he was too shy to ask someone, and then he realised it was too late anyway, so he just killed an hour wandering around the lobby pretending to be on the phone. And the thing is, China's increased influence should be alarming because they're an autocratic country. You don't necessarily want China setting global priorities on things like human rights and democracy. And yet, Trump's reckless behaviour is opening the door to exactly that happening. Not to mention the fact that what he's doing is going to make it harder for him to accomplish his own goals. He wants to contain North Korea. Well, to do that, you might want to appoint an ambassador to South Korea. He wants Germany to spend more on its military. OK, but maybe stop publicly shaming Merkel if you want her to be able to sell that idea back home. And if he wants to contain security threats like ISIS and Al-Shabaab in African countries, then maybe don't call African countries fucking shitholes. And that is the thing here. Trump can say that he doesn't care because his approach is America first, but you need allies to get anything done. Foreign affairs is like sex. If you loudly announce that you will always come first, you're going to have trouble finding partners. And as for Trump's other promise, that the world will stop laughing, it is not just comedians doing that, it's world leaders. Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull was at a press dinner last year, and he had himself a bit of fun.
Donald and I, we are winning and winning in the polls. We are winning so much. We are winning like we have never won before. Not the fake polls. Not the fake polls. They're the ones we're not winning in. We're winning in the real polls. You know, the online polls. They are so easy to win. I have this Russian guy. Believe me, it's true. It is true.
That is a key ally using the fact that our president is a pathological liar as a punchline and crushing that room like a fourth grader with a carrot stick stuck up his nose. And if you think that was grim, let me show you one more clip we found when we were looking for Trump impersonators around the world. This one is from Russian TV, with a comedian making fun of Trump's suspiciously close relationship to Putin. And there is a fun little surprise for you just at the end.
The other day, Hillary asked me, Donald, do you love Russia? I answered, yes, I do. I love Russia. But you have no evidence against me.
Oh, my God! That is as happy as I have ever seen Putin. Ever. I guess at least we now know what type of humour that Putin likes. He likes the kind where he meddles in another country's election, succeeds, has a joke about it made to his face in public, and then realises it all worked out and no one can touch him. That's the kind of humour that Putin likes. It just creases him up. Look, I know that all of this is depressing because it seems like America's reputation overseas is under attack from its own president, which is just ridiculous. Soft power is an act of salesmanship. It's selling your brand. It is the one thing that Trump is supposed to be good at, and he's fucking blowing it. So as an immigrant who has fallen in love with this country, for what it's worth, please allow me to speak to the rest of the world in America's defence for a moment, because Donald Trump does not reflect America. I mean, to be completely honest, he does reflect it a bit, but the point is, America is not one thing. It's a beautiful mess of contradictions where good and bad are mixed together. On one hand, it makes Mountain Dew, which tastes like a honeydew melon was fucked by a radioactive clown. On the other hand, it also made this awesome bed shaped like the Batmobile. You can fall asleep in that thing and be Batman if Batman somehow got locked out of the Batcave and had to sleep in his car. But that's the American dream right there. America is the country that came up with YouTube, which, yes, I know, gave you in the world that shithead Logan Paul. But it also gave you those videos of adults in T-Rex suits on dirt bikes, ballet dancing, exercising, and doing basic car repairs.
You know what's important? Millions of people agree with me when I say that.
If you would have looked on one of the other networks and all of the people that were calling in, they're saying, we agree with Mr. Trump, we agree. They're very smart people.
Right, but just because they believe you and you believe them doesn't make it true. This isn't like Peter Pan, where believing in fairies will keep Tinkerbell alive. This isn't a magic thing, Peter. She has Lou Gehrig's disease. And maybe instead of clapping, you should have done the ice bucket challenge, then she'd still be alive. I'm sorry, Peter, but she's dying. Tinkerbell's dying. The point is, even if you take the kindest approach here and assume Trump made an honest, innocent mistake and passed along a news story without checking it, when he was presented with a lack of evidence, he disregarded that fact, at which point he is lying. And it seems no one in the White House has a problem with that. Because when asked to justify the president's views, this is what Sean Spicer did.
I think the president has believed that for a while, a long-standing belief that he's maintained. It's a belief he maintains. It's a belief that he's maintained for a while. As I've noted several times now, he's believed this for a long time. It was a comment that he made on a long-standing belief. I've asked and answered this question twice. He believes what he believes based on the information he's provided.
If he does believe that, what does that mean for democracy?
It means that, yeah, I've answered your question.
Have you?
No, you haven't, Melissa. No, you haven't. Because this isn't about belief. It can't be. The incidence of voter fraud is a verifiable fact, and faith and facts aren't like Bill Pullman and Bill Paxton. When you confuse them, it actually matters. Real people get hurt when you make policy based on false information. Billions will get spent on a wall that won't work to prevent a crime wave that isn't happening, while refugees sit in dangerous situations to prevent Bowling Green-style massacres that never took place. So, what are we going to do? Well, the press is going to be a key element in helping us sort out fact from fiction, and they are under attack. This administration has seized on small corrections in news coverage to paint critical outlets as fake news, attempting to delegitimize all of them. And this is only going to get worse. Steve Bannon has already labelled the media the opposition party, although there does seem to be one exception.
News report said the only seat that was reserved for the media at Trump's news conference Wednesday was in the front row, and it was for Breitbart News.
Oh, that is some blatant favoritism. You are Snow White introducing the dwarf, saying, meet Grumpy, Sleepy, Sneezy, fucking awesome big dick cool dwarf, and the three others. And if you are thinking that Breitbart went out of their way to ask a challenging question, think again.
Go ahead. This decision to publish fake news and all the problems that we've seen throughout the media over the course of the election, what reforms do you recommend for this industry here?
And I actually have two follow-up questions. Does this feel good? And will you let me know when you're going to come? just tap my head. Tap my head. Look, the end game here is obvious. With a completely delegitimized press, you're only going to have one source to get your news from, as one congressman happily pointed out.
Better to get your news directly from the president. In fact, it might be the only way to get the unvarnished truth.
Getting your news directly from the leader is basically the philosophy of North Korea. And the notion that our leaders should be able to pass on mistruths with impunity should be alarming to absolutely everybody, regardless of politics. Republicans should badly want our sense of objective reality to remain intact, just in case the Democrats ever find their own appealing reality star to win back the White House. RuPaul, for instance. Make America fierce again. Hashtag Make America fierce again. So we all need to commit to defending the reality of facts, but it's going to take work. As we've already seen, protests, calls to legislators and lawsuits are effective ways to try and drag the administration back to reality. But this needs to go down to a personal level as well. We should make extra efforts on social media to try and verify stories before passing them on, especially if they confirm our pre-existing biases. Ask questions of yourself like, is this a source I know and recognise? Has anyone fact-checked this? Does it link to primary sources? And do those sources match what the story says? And if you see an outlet repeatedly getting things wrong and never correcting it, maybe stop trusting it, whether that outlet is some idiot's blog or the White House. And because I know our president will not follow any of those suggestions, partly because rightfully he does not watch this show.